So, first, I want to talk about how to read more effectively. This is a technique that might help for you. And indeed, in college, you will be reading more than you were reading in high school. So, this technique is called PRR, or otherwise known as preview, read, and recall. So, before even opening the book or start reading the text, you want to familiarize yourself with the text. So you want to look at basically everything else before reading. So you want to look at the title, you want to look at who wrote the text, you want to look at the introduction, the different subheadings that are listed in the table of contents, also like the first sentence of each section and the conclusion. Also, if there's any like charts or diagrams. And while you're doing all of this, you will also be making predictions and inferences. Now, once you start reading, you want to be able to set yourself realistic goals for how long and how many pages you will read. Also, while reading, you want to ask yourself questions before going on to the next paragraph. This is something like if you're watching a show, like say you're watching a Netflix show and it's a series and you finish the first episode and you're already asking yourself questions about the next episode kind of thing. Basically the same thing. And then after you finish reading the text, you'll recall any highlights from what you read. You will also ask questions and answer them, but and then you will also underline keywords or phrases and just annotate around the margins. That's where you can also be asking yourself questions and and anything that stands out for you about the text.
All right, now we're moving over to note taking. And these tips are going to be for both your readings and also any lectures by teachers or professors. So the first thing you want to be aware of is being conscious when you're writing. Don't just write everything your professor says. You can kind of tell what things are important. For example, if they repeat something, that's probably going to be on the test. If they write on the board or underline it, that's definitely going to be on the test. So you want to write those things and then write all the details they say about that thing. Also, highlighting is not note taking. Just like what Victor said, you can highlight, but make sure to write in the margins or somewhere, just like reiterating what was there so it sticks in your mind. And learning what's important, such as main ideas in the lesson, dates, names, places, like important nouns are going to be important. And lastly, pick a note-taking method that fits you. So we're going to be talking about the 4 most well-known note-taking methods, and then you can just think about which one fits you the most. And another study tip is to condense your notes nearer to the exam date. So this can be on flashcards or as notes. Just like rewriting notes will make it stick in your head a little bit more. So our first method is the outline method. Thoughts, and so on. So it highlights key points for you. You don't have to think about it, but it doesn't really work with diagrams or if classes aren't structured. Also doesn't work if you're doing notes for a math or science class because those have diagrams. Next is the Cornell method. This has a very simple structure. You can definitely see it. So you'll have to set it up before class. It'll have keywords and questions on the left, and then towards the right, you'll be able to find the main notes and main points. So it cuts down on review time as well because you'll be summarizing the lesson at the end of your class, but it does take a lot of time, so that is a con. Our third method is the mapping method. This is also pretty self-explanatory. It's pretty easy to edit unless it gets too busy on the page, and it can be visually appealing, but you may run out of space and it can be confusing with errors going everywhere. And the last method is a new method. It's called boxing method, and it works best with a touch screen, iPad, just something digital. It's very organized in a way that is better for memorization, but it doesn't really work with topics that can't be grouped. So you'll have to think about whether it'll fit for your lesson or not. So after going through all these methods, just put in the chat. We'll take 1 minute. You don't have to say it if you don't want to, but just say whether you're more interested in trying out the outline, Cornell, mapping, or boxing method. Someone said I kind of use all of them. Yeah, I mean, you can use all of them for different subjects. That's true. Mapping, outline. Wow, that's really cool that you started using Cornell notes since middle school. Cornell and boxing. That's cool. I only heard about boxing recently, to be honest. Well, I think we're going to move on to the planning a schedule routine. Study routine. So for how we're going to do this, since study routines are so personalized, we're going to first poll you on finding out your learning style. So in these polls, pay attention to whether you're answering A, B, or C more, or if it's a mix. We're getting a lot of B's. All right, last call for putting in your answer. All right, so it looks like first answer had a lot of B's. And that's cool. Okay, second question. When you see the word cat, what do? A, picture a cat in your head. B, say the word cat to yourself in your mind. Or C, think about being with a cat, stroking it or hearing it meow. It's very close. Ooh, a lot of more B's again. I personally just think of a cat in my head, picturing it. All right, we got 100% participation, and a lot of them were B's. And now we're going to do the last question. What do you like to do to relax? Bees are winning again. I mean, it's not really competition, but you know. Okay. Looks like we got a lot of bees again. So you can just click again. Yes. So if you answered mostly A, you're mostly an auditory learner. If you answered mostly B, you're a visual learner. And C, you're a tactile or kinesthetic learner. And most people are a mix. So if you got like 1 A and 2 Bs, don't freak out or anything. So creating a study routine is really about experimenting and feeling if things are good, but I'm going to give y'all a little bit of examples for what you could do for each learning style. So if you're a visual learner, using Quizlet for terms would be really beneficial, particularly the flashcard feature, and also all their features. They have matching, they have a game thing where you have to type it as fast as possible. There's also a trick of trying to visualize the material. So for example, if you're studying about history, you can assign the different key players colors. Like they're wearing a hat that's green, and then you just memorize that and visualize it. And last, color code your notes. If you're an auditory learner, zooming a study buddy or anyone who can quiz you will be really beneficial. And then also recording yourself while studying and repeating facts with your eyes closed will really emphasize the auditory experience. See that someone does these things, that's really great. Last is tactile or kinesthetic. So you could study while you're walking, while you're exercising, while you're laying down in bed, while you're doing something. And then also writing out terms with your finger in the air. And also looking up real world examples of abstract concepts. So, like, for example, if there's a scientific concept that you can't really touch, you can just look up case studies. And I'm sorry about all the beeping. Another tip is to make your distractions your rewards. So maybe after 30 minutes of studying, you can finally go on Instagram. And last of all, using Google Calendar for reminders. Now we're going to go into our first Q&A. So you can put questions in the Q&A section or the chat section if the Q&A section doesn't make sense.
We did have one question already. You might be better to answer this question. It was, what's the difference between the boxing and mapping method for taking notes?
So with the mapping method, okay. With the boxing method, you're going to be putting everything in a box probably later after you've written everything, which is why it's so useful to have an iPad. And also it's for memorization purposes that it's used. For the mapping method, it's more about showing how things relate to each other instead of like putting things in categories, if that makes sense. Got another question. How long would you recommend to study every day? That's a good question. It really depends on like assignments and stuff. I'm just gonna answer this because no one else will answer this. But I think if you're in high school, I'd recommend like an hour for each subject. And then for college, 2 hours for each subject. Just like anything that feels good to you.
Yeah, I can answer that one a little more just from like my experience. I think more so based on what subjects are more important or like what's higher priority at that time. So like if you have a final coming up or an exam, you know, you'll have end of semester exams. So whichever one is going to be your most difficult exam, say you're taking like AP chemistry or AP physics, then that's going to be where your priority is. So you're going to focus more time on that. And so then if you know you're really good at English and you have an AP English exam, then you're going to spend less time studying on that one. And so it's really just better to cater it towards whichever one is more important to you or whichever one's going to be harder for you. And so, so like Jasmine said, you know, 1 hour per subject is good. I know you have a lot of subjects in high school. And then once you get into college, you know, you'll have maybe like 4 or 5 classes. So it's easier to divide that time out. Yeah, about 2 hours a subject is good. It's not easy to do that. It's very like difficult to work that in and try and do that every day. And so it's really just you find the rhythm of what's comfortable for you and how you're absorbing the most information. Definitely don't study until your brain is fried and you're like, okay, I'm not absorbing any more information. Like at that point, just close your laptop, close the book, and then just take a break for the rest of the day. But you know, study for like an hour or two at a time and then quiz yourself, go through the notes, and then you can move on to the next subject or take a break. That's my advice on studying or how long to study for. Victor, did you have anything before I take the next question?
Yeah, I feel like, yeah, I would definitely agree with what both of you said. I think I would tailor it to like the subject. So if there's like a more challenging subject, then that's the one that you would like put more time into it. We're also going to be talking more about like different study tips and tricks and stuff later on. So yeah.
Yeah, and so the next two questions: how do you stop yourself from zoning out, and the Pomodoro technique? So the Pomodoro technique, I'm actually going to talk on that a little bit later in the presentation. So we'll come back to that. And then how do you stop yourself from zoning out? So I actually have a hard time staying focused, and I had a hard time in college staying focused on my subjects. So what I would do is, and I'll talk about this a little more later, but what I did is I stayed on campus. So like if you have classes on campus, stay on campus. Like don't leave campus until you're done studying, because if you go back home to your dorm or to your apartment, whatever it may be, or back home, you're going to get distracted by outside noise, whether it be family or friends or TV, whatever, social events, whatever it may be. So if you just stay on campus and focus and say, hey, I'm on campus to study, to do homework, then that's going to help out a lot because you have less distractions. If you're with classmates, you're all focused on studying. And so you could also do that, have somebody with you to hold you accountable, and you're holding them accountable at the same time. So having a study partner helps out a lot with that.
I was just
I
about
also wanted to, oh, sorry.
to go for it.
Okay, well, I also wanted to answer these questions because that was definitely me in high school and college. I would just like zone out even though I had like my own space to study. So what I found was really beneficial for me was taking a lot of small breaks. So like I would do 2 pages and then I would just like see 3 posts on the social media website that I was always on. And then I would do 2 more pages and then like do that. So I would never get far enough in studying that I would zone out, and I would always be able to like stop myself from going further in my distractions.
I guess that kind of goes in line with the Pomodoro technique as well. Like you're just setting your time limits for studying shorter, and then you have your break time right after. So, like I said, we'll come back to that later on in the presentation. But if that's all the questions you'll have,
We have 3 more
yeah.
questions. So
Oh, my
in the
bad.
Q&A section,
Yeah.
but you're good. So the first one is, how long would you say your reward time should be? That really depends on the person, but for me, I already told my methods. Do y'all want to share?
I'm pretty good at sticking to the 5 minute time. And then once I get to that 30-minute break period using the Pomodoro technique, it works out pretty well for me. Sometimes though, you just need a little extra time. It's not like strict, like you're going to like do anything bad if you don't, or if you go past that 5 minutes. But yeah, if you can stick to that time, it's good. But if you don't, then that's okay. If you need the extra time, then take the extra time. So, but no longer, I would say probably than 15 minutes if you're trying to keep track, and then you reward yourself with that longer break at the end.
We have another question here with, would watching videos about the subject count as studying? And we're going to talk about that later, but yes. And then our last question is, how did you find out about these methods? And can you just maybe clarify in the chat, Daniel, like which methods you mean?
While you're doing that, Daniel, I'll answer this last question that was put in the chat. Do you think taking notes with multiple colors is beneficial, or do you think it gets messy and hard to read? So that's going to be a personal preference type of thing. For me, I have tried experimenting with different highlighting colors and trying to be organize my notes that way. Red is correlated to this, blue is this, green is that. But eventually, I just get so like for me, I kind of just get tired of pulling the caps off the highlighters and the pens and having it all ready. And so that's just me though. But if it works for you, if that's how you're a visual learner, and so when you go to say math and you have math coded as blue, like okay, blue, and then I have my algebra and my pre-cal stuff coded in yellow and red, and then if that works for you, then that works for you. It's just really personal preference at that point.
I think people also use like sticky notes, and they're like different colors, so you can see it that way.
And we got some clarification from Daniel. So he was specifically asking about the box or the mapping method. So I originally found all the pros and cons and everything from an article that I found. So you can Google note-taking methods. Technically there's 7 or 8, but they kind of meld into being the same thing with others, so I didn't include them. All right, I think we're good to move on.
All right, so using some different resources for studying, I just put a few down right here. I put four, and so I used Quizlet, YouTube, Zoom, or Google Meet meetings, and just subject-related apps. Those are the main ones that I used when I was in college, and I found them very resourceful. And so Quizlet, like Jasmine said earlier, Quizlet is a very good app and just website for creating notes and studying different subjects. And so it's very easy to organize everything. You have your flashcard decks, and then within those decks, you can do the matching games or the typing as fast as you can to answer the question. It's like a time test. And then just, of course, just a randomized test with your flashcards. It'll organize it all for you. And so I'm sure some of you are very familiar with Quizlet, but that's just something that I use that was really helpful. And of course, if you don't have the notes for it, there probably is another student somewhere in the United States that has had a similar answer or similar course as you. And you can always find notes from somebody else. And there's most likely somebody that has the information if you can't find it. And so that's where it's super reliable. There's always somebody who has the answer on Quizlet. And so, and also you can go off their flashcards as well. Sometimes you don't have to make your own, which is very handy if you're under time constraints. Victor, do you want to chime in real quick? Oh, okay, sorry. And then YouTube. So like you were saying, I don't remember who asked the question about, are videos allowed for studying, or is it a study method? I find that it is, and Jasmine also said yes. I'm sure Victor agrees as well. YouTube has a lot of very good resources on it, especially for subject-related matter. And so there's people who teach everything on YouTube. And so there's going to be professors, instructors, tutors, whoever it is that is a professional or very knowledgeable on the subject. They're going to be on YouTube, and they'll have their own channel, and they'll post videos regularly. And so it's really just finding the right person that teaches in the way that you enjoy and is either visual or, they just speaks to you, whatever it may be. There's channels out there that will provide that information for you. And so just a few examples of them. You have Crash Course, which has, videos on almost every subject, and they're really quick, to the point. And like I said, you have professors who will record their lectures and then post them on YouTube for either classes to observe or just for general population to view. And then you also have just tutors who will post, okay, so you need help figuring out y equals mx plus b, and they'll break down that equation for you and explain that in a more thorough manner than maybe your teacher can, or maybe it's just in a better way that you can understand. So yes, YouTube, great resource. Obviously, if you're using it for studying at the time when you're supposed to be studying, it's very easy to get distracted using YouTube, but just as long as you have it set in your mind, hey, I'm using YouTube to study, this is what it's for right now. And so yes, YouTube is a very viable resource. University and school Zoom meetings, by that what I mean is, if you are still online at the time that you go to school, or even not, if you have in-person classes, then they can still be very beneficial to you. Setting up those Zoom meetings with your classmates if y'all are still distant, or if nobody can get together at the same time, then having those Zoom meetings, Google meetings, that's going to be a really beneficial resource as far as getting together, bouncing ideas back and forth, studying together, just asking each other's questions and hearing what everybody else's perspectives are and having what they have to say about the subject. That's going to help out a lot. And not just working with students or with your classmates, also working with your instructors or your professors, or even, for high school, y'all do it right now. You see your teacher on Zoom every day. And so you can always schedule a Zoom meeting with your professor, with your instructor, and have them break down the subject for you. And so I'm sure it's kind of more flexible for them as well, because they don't have to go anywhere. They can just be in their office and set up a Zoom meeting or Google Meet, and then just meet with you, still face to face, it's just not in person. And they'll be more than happy to break down the subject for you. So Zoom and Google Meet are awesome. And then just subject related apps. So for those, I'm more so talking about like specific subject related apps. So you have your Spanish or like language learning apps. So you have like Duolingo, Babbel, those, if you're going to have to take probably a language class depending on your subject. So that might help a lot getting that extra practice outside of class. You have different apps for like math, science, history, and then of course you have your big name publishers who have their own textbook apps. So like Pearson and McGraw-Hill, they usually have apps with their textbooks on those. And along with that will come study tools. And so right now, I just took a course with Pearson, and they had multiple videos of instructors showing how to do skills and how and what certain terms mean. And then it also had practice tests and practice quizzes and matching and flashcards. And so those apps will also be really helpful. Sometimes they don't work the greatest, but you got to take the good and the bad with that. And so yeah, there's tons of resources out there to help you out. These are just a few that I know I used quite a bit during my time in college. So yeah, I hope y'all can find those of good use and utilize them to the best of your capabilities.
Manny, I like that picture that you had on the previous slide. Um, so study smarter, not harder. When I think about this term, I think about quality quality over quantity. Yeah, that's what exactly it. So I think about it like, one can study, I don't know, days and days and days and days, but it's not about like how much you study, but like how effectively you study. So, because what you want to do is you want to be able to master the material. You want to be able to, remember it, not like just for that test that's at the end of the week, but you want to be able to remember it and apply it maybe like years later. Oh yeah, I remember that from that class. So, uh, and I know you all asked this in the questions, but what you want to do is when you're studying, you want to focus on maybe doing 25 to 30-minute sessions with like 5 to 10 minute breaks in between. That will just, help you focus and be able to get the material more effectively. I know Manny mentioned this before, either like also before, where he said that, maybe you can go a little bit more than the 5 to 10 minutes. And so, like, you can also do the minute sessions also more than 25 to 30 minutes. It's all up to you, whatever works best for you. That's just a suggestion. But also, what you want to do is you want to be actively engaging with the material. I personally myself also get easily distracted too. So when you are able to focus on these sessions, you want to also be studying your material by, creating study guides, and making your own questions, making your own answers to these questions. Also, when reviewing the material, you want to be able to derive examples like from your own experiences. That also like helps you connect with the material. So like, oh yeah, that reminds me of this. And so once like test time comes along, it's like, oh yeah, that. So that's also very helpful. You also want to create concept maps or diagrams, and Jasmine mentioned this before with the note-taking methods. So I think that's also very helpful, especially for visual learners and even like tactic learners like me. And then even that goes with like the taking legible, effective notes that work and make sense for you. Whatever note-taking method works for you, use that, because that will help you later. I'm the type of person who, you know, uh, I like to see the material, but I also like to write it down, because if I write it down, I feel like I remember it more. So like I prefer to write down things than to type them, basically, because there's another study that shows that if you write instead of typing it, you'll remember it more. And also, before any study session, you also want to like outline your study goals. There's nothing better, trust me, there's nothing better than when you write down your goals before starting to study, and then once you finish studying, you get to like basically check off all the goals that you had before and that you were able to do it, and like you feel really good about it. So those are my tips, or to how to study smarter, not harder. And there's a few examples that I included as well. So these are examples of concept maps or diagrams. So you can see here, there's a Venn diagram. So sometimes like in your essays, you'll have an essay where you have to compare and contrast either two people or two ideas. And so this is really helpful to see like what are the differences and the similarities between two ideas. And Then you also see a diagram here below where you get to see that relationship between each. And then there's also this other example, and I know I think it's also an example that was shown in like in the note-taking method. So yeah, I think it's the outline one. So you get to, you know, include the main ideas, and then, you know, what are the subtopics and the definitions and examples. So these prove to be very effective as well.
All right. So I see that we do have a question in the Q&A. We just have one more slide before Q&A, so we'll answer that shortly. So these are some more online school study tips specifically for online school. And so I put together some yays and nays, some do's and don'ts. So some yays, waking up at the same time every day. I know that it can be difficult because you're at home and you just want to sleep in every day. And then you're like, okay, well, I don't have to be in class till like 11 o'clock. And even at that, I just have to roll over, log on to Zoom, put the code in, and then I just, I'm still in bed. And then it's nice to be at home, but if you wake up every day at the same time, especially when you get into college or trade school, whatever it may be that you're going to, waking up at the same time every day keeps you on that schedule of the day. And so say you wake up at 8 and you're going to go to bed at 10:30 or 11, whichever time it may be, you have so many hours set in the day to do work or to get things done, whatever you need to do, have relaxation time. And so having that structured schedule of your day of saying, okay, I know I'm going to wake up at 8 o'clock tomorrow. I'm going to wake up at 7, and I know what I need to do right off the back. And so that just helps. It helps me stay scheduled or structured, and I'm sure it'll help a lot of other people stay structured. I'm not the only person who uses this tip. Um, so yes, waking up at the same time every day is great. Obviously, if you're really tired and you need to sleep in, get your rest. But if you can, do your best to wake up at the same time every day. And then along with that, assign times for asynchronous work. So like I said, when you wake up at the same time every day and you go to bed at the same time every day, you know how many hours you have in your time while you're awake. And so assign times for yourself for the asynchronous work, when you're not in lecture or when you're not studying with your friends over Zoom or Google Meet or in person, assign those times so okay, I'm going to be studying from 2 to 4 today. I'm going to be studying for my AP exam, and that's all I'm doing in that time. I'll have breaks put into those times, but from 2 to 4, I'm busy. And so having those times set aside, it also, like Victor was saying, you have goals set. And so if you have a goal, okay, I'm going to study 4 hours today. I'm going to study from 10 to 12 and from 2 to 4. Then once you complete those study times, you get the satisfaction of checking that off, saying I completed my study tasks for the day, and it makes you feel really good. Like I did what I was supposed to do today, and now I can relax for the rest of the day. I can go and hang out with my friends. I can get online. I can play video games. I can do whatever it may be. And so it's not only helps you stay structured, but it gives you a sense of satisfaction once those times of work have been completed and you actually did work during those times. And so along with those times, you want to set boundaries, especially if you're at home, because this is catered to online school. Especially if you're at home or you have a roommate or you're in a dorm, wherever it may be, you're going to want to tell your friends and your family politely that, hey, I'm studying from 2 to 4. I really can't be distracted during that time. I have a lot of work to get done. I have a test coming up tomorrow or the day after. I have a project. I have a presentation. I really need this time to study. If you have a question, if you need to get to me, just knock on the door. I'm not going to get mad at you. Just let me know what you need, and I'll do my best to work around it. But this is really my time that I need to study. So, like I said, just be polite about it. Just let them know, like, hey, I'm in my room. I'm in my study room right now. 10 to 12, 2 to 4. Those are the times I'm unavailable unless it's something urgent or I can work around it. And that'll really help you stay on task. And it may be hard for your friends to understand that, oh, like Manny's setting aside time. Like, why can't he just hang out with me right now? Like, I want to go out and I want to do this, but he's busy studying. Like, he can't just let it go for one day. It's like, well, I can, but if I do, then it could potentially become a habit. And I need my friends to know that, hey, I'm studying during this time because I know what goals I have set for myself and I know what I need to get accomplished throughout the day. And so just being polite about it, letting them know, like, hey, I have stuff to do today, they'll most likely understand and respect those boundaries. And so next, make sure to take breaks. Take breaks throughout your day. Take breaks while you're studying. Go outside. We're on our computers all day long, staring at the screen. We're staring at books all day on our phones. Go outside, take a break, go for a walk. Just step outside of your room wherever you're studying. Talk to your roommate. Talk to your family. Go pet the dog. Go pet the cat. Whatever it may be. Take a break. It's super beneficial for you. Gives your brain a break. Gives your eyes a break from straining on the screen all day. It just helps out a lot maintaining that stamina of being able to study for long sessions. And so just make sure you take breaks, take care of yourself. And lastly, find someone to teach to. This is a big one for not only online school, but in person as well. If you can find someone to teach to, so that means, okay, so my teacher has taught me the subject. Now, can I teach it back to somebody? Can I reciprocate the material? And so say you just learned, like this is just my example. I know you already learned this, but y equals mx plus b. Say you just learned this and you're like, okay, I think I understand it. I'm going to go explain to Victor what this means and what it helps me to do in terms of math. And you're explaining it to him and then you get stumbled and then you're like, oh, I don't really remember what that means. And so that shows you that you don't fully understand the subject yet. So you know what you need to go back and study. But if I was able to go and explain to Victor all of the concept of y equals mx plus b, finding a parabola and all that stuff, then that shows me like, okay, I know I'm fairly well ready for this test and I don't need to focus so much on that subject. I can focus on something else. So if you're able to teach it to the person, that's awesome. That shows that you are very proficient in that subject and you have a good understanding of what you're talking about. But if you can't, go back, study the material, get a better understanding of it, and then try again. It's not like nobody's going to make fun of you for trying to better your intelligence or your knowledge of a subject. So, and then just some don'ts, some nays. Multitasking while studying, especially while at home. It's easy to just throw on a YouTube video, throw on TV, have some background noise. Music is fine if that helps you study, but try not to have TV on, TV show, especially a show that you really like, or your phone right next to you. That's going to be very distracting. And so it's super, super easy to get distracted and take time away from your studying when you're supposed to be studying. So try not to multitask as best as you can. Unless, of course, like in Jasmine's methods, we have the tactile. You could be walking on the treadmill, going for a walk, listening to your book, whatever it may be. Of course, that's a viable option. And I'm talking more about like doing chores and trying to study at the same time, watching TV. Try not to do that. Home office does not equal your bedroom. So that's hard for a lot of us right now because we all live at home. Some of us may not have extra bedrooms or extra space in the house to set aside a desk or a space in the corner for our stuff. And so, but try your best when you do, say, move out or have some extra space, try your best to separate your office study area from your bedroom because your brain will begin to associate that space with work and study instead of sleep and rest. And it throws things off. It's hard to get out of that mindset of, hey, okay, my bedroom is for me to rest, for me to sleep in, not to study, not to work. And so try to separate the two. It'll help out a lot in establishing, a healthy mindset towards the day. Because then, like I said, you associate your bedroom with work. So you walk into your bed and you're like, oh, I got to study here now. And I don't want to be in this room anymore. And so, try and separate the two as best as possible. I understand it's not easy, but if you can, that's awesome. Procrastinate, you'll hear this all the time from everybody that you've ever gone to school with. Teachers, instructors, don't procrastinate, but it's true. It really is true. If you can find a method that works best for you as far as studying and getting homework done, then it will benefit you in the long run, and you have no idea how much it will help you. If you can just study a week ahead of time, 4 days ahead of time, it'll just save you so much time before those 2 days, before the test or before an exam, before a project is due, because procrastinating, just putting all that to the end is just so detrimental to your grades and to just your well-being, because you'll be up late studying all night. It's just not good. So try your best not to procrastinate. I know you've already heard that probably a million times, but you'll hear it a million more throughout college. Staying up late, studying on electronics, and just being on electronics. So try your best not to be on your phone before you go to sleep. or on your laptop, or just watching TV, whatever it may be. It really throws off your sleep cycle, keeps you awake longer. You feel more tired in the morning. If you can, shut off your electronics before you go to bed, at least 30 minutes is what people say. And that'll, give your eyes some time to desensitize to the light, understand that it is time to go to bed, and you'll probably wake up feeling more refreshed than you would if you had stayed up all night. And then lastly, kind of goes along with taking a break, staying inside all day. Try your best not to do that. Sunlight is very good for us. It's good to get fresh air, get outside of the house, get away from the computer, get away from Zoom, Google Meet. You just try and get away from it all. If you can, go for a walk around the neighborhood, take your dog for a walk. If your cat likes walks, take your cat for a walk. I know my cat doesn't like walks. Just try and get outside, take care of yourself, get that sunlight, and take a break from the computer as best as you can. So those are my online school study tips. And so now we do have Q&A after this. So we'll go ahead and take more questions if you have more questions. I know we already have a few. And so our first one is, how do you know which notes method works best for you? So I'll go ahead and answer for me, at least, since I'm already talking. That is going to be kind of trial and error. At least that's how it was for me. And so it took me at least probably until my sophomore year of college to figure out what study method worked best for me. Because freshman year, I was still in the high school mindset. And so I was like, okay, well, I can just study everything the night before, get it all done, and then I'll pass my test, and I'll forget everything. And so throughout, as I continued to progress through college, I tried different methods of studying. I tried the color-coded deal. If that works for you, that works for you. It didn't work for me. I tried color coding all my notes on my iPad. I got tired of changing colors, changing highlighters, and it all just kind of melded together anyway in my head. And so it just didn't work for me. And then Cornell notes, I tried Cornell notes. I tried all the different note-taking strategies, and it kind of just, none of them melded together for me, like, in a good manner. And so eventually, like, it's really just trial and error. And so for me, what I found is I just take notes. Like, I just write what I think is important. And then as I read the book, I'll take a note. If I think it's important, I'll go back to it. And so that's what works best for me. Like I said, it's going to be a lot of trial and error, just trying to figure out what is your prime study method. What do y'all think, Jasmine, Victor?
I agree. If you want to do it in a quick way and not wait until junior year of college, I would recommend doing a different note-taking style for each day. I'm sorry about the cat meowing. And just seeing which is least confusing to you, which like makes you remember the information more, and just go from there.
Also, I guess between now, you could also try and start like between now and your time in college. So like if you already kind of have an idea of what you want to major in, say just for example, it's the medical field. There's tons of like free text out there on the medical field. And so you could go ahead and start studying anatomy and physiology if you wanted to. And so you can try and figure out how best to study for that, just between now and then. Obviously, you want your summer, you want to take time away from school, but it's a good time to, just try and figure out like, hey, I do pretty well with color coding, or I do well with Cornell notes or the box method. And so, don't take like 3 years to figure that out. It's not worth it. So how do you make a effective study group? I'll be honest, I was very much an independent learner, so I can't really attest to study groups all that well. I mean, I was part of a few, but they were not my go-to method of studying, other than when I was trying to teach somebody. That was about the only time. But to make one, I would say have a group me within the class. Usually if you can, group me's work pretty well for the most part. But if not, usually the people sitting in front of the class are very good people to talk to, because they know like, hey, I'm in the front, I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn. And so those are really good people to talk to. If you have friends who are really good at studying, who are very knowledgeable, maybe smarter than you, that's a really good person to take notes from and study with. It just kind of depends on who's in your class, and you kind of get the feel of the layout of the class. Like, okay, this group over here is just here to knock this elective out, and this group over here is actually here to learn and understand the material. And so those are the kind of people you'll want to, I wouldn't say associate, like I don't want to say disassociate from the other group, but like those are the people you want in your study group, basically, the people who are actually trying in the class. So if you can find those people, then, the people who ask a lot of questions, trying to actually understand the material, that those are the people I would say to include. I don't know. Jasmine, it kind of looked like you didn't really, you're more of an independent as well. So, what about you, Victor?
No, I definitely would say that study groups was super helpful for me, super helpful. Um, Also, like Manny said, like teaching others, but not only that, but I think it also helps to keep each other accountable. So, like for me, that was a huge success for me in college, was to be able to form study groups. Like I think, like Manny said, like I was able to identify who like were my classmates, who were like maybe like understanding the material, and who were like cool to be around with too, because you don't want to be with someone who's just like not cool, I guess, like not nice and stuff. But um, that's also another thing that I would say is that don't be afraid to ask for help, because something that I've learned, even like going off to college, and I just recently graduated with my master's, like even in my master's program, like I was still like, you will be confused about something in the material, like no matter in what level you are. Like even when I was doing my master's, like I also had a lot of questions, but sometimes it can be intimidating to be able to, oh, like I don't want to sound like, like I don't know, I'm dumb and that I don't know the material. But the fact is that there's a lot of people in the classroom that may have the same questions that you might have. It's just like you don't see it, right? Because sometimes maybe people hide it or whatever. So I feel like most of the people wouldn't mind like hanging out and like studying together to be able to understand the material. And that's something that helped me so much when I was in college, for sure.
Awesome. Thank you, Victor. Last question. What if you are able to reciprocate the information, but you don't understand it? My question is basically, how do you understand info? And so I think I understand where you're coming from, is that you're able to memorize the material for the test, but you don't quite understand the concepts that you're applying for the test. And so my response to that is, especially when you get into college and you know what you want to study, or wherever you go, trade school, technical school, professional school, whatever school it is, do your best not to study for, like, don't study for the like study for the test, but don't study to just pass the test. Like make sure you're able to apply those concepts and understand what you're actually learning. That's what's worked best for me, as far as not just saying, yeah, y equals mx plus b. Like I know what that is. I don't know what it does. Like I don't remember, but because it doesn't apply to my field, obviously. But that's what I'm saying. Like if I actually was interested in that concept, then I would have learned more than just, yeah, this is how to solve for x. So actually try to understand how the subject applies and what you're going to do with it beyond just the test. So example from my personal experience, as an EMT student, I learned all these concepts about the body, about different emergencies, traumatic, medical, all these things. And so like I actually have to know what those are and how they work with the body, instead of just saying like, yeah, I'm just trying to pass my tests and get my certification. Like, because in the field, I can't just say, yeah, I know what this concept is, but I don't know actually how to treat the patient. So I had to change my learning mindset and understand that I'm actually learning to apply this in a career and not just apply it on the test. So if you can kind of change that perspective in your head to understand like, hey, this is actually going to benefit my job and not just my grades, then that will really help you to actually understand the information, from my experience.
It's like almost 6, so maybe we should move on. Um, but yeah, talk to your coach about everything.
Because we are short on time, I won't go over all of the things that I've listed here as my tips, but I think, again, I want to just emphasize the fact that going and asking for help. I think that is super important because, like I mentioned, you're not the only person who might be having the same question. So ask for help. Ask for help, form study groups. Even if you can, by teaching someone, maybe you can also like reserve a room that has like a whiteboard, or if like you're in high school and maybe, in your classroom there's a whiteboard, or in the library, that would be great. Um, for me, it also helps to like rewrite notes. And then once you're in college, please also go to office hours. Super important. Is if I could tell my college, like my freshman college self, what to like to do, like I would definitely go to office hours. That's another way of asking for help, is going to the professor or going to the TA and asking for help. And also giving yourself enough breaks is super important. I like to go for a run afterwards, and it just helps me clear my mind. And yeah, please don't like cram the material, and having to do like all nighters because you're cramming the material, and just stay away from distractions.
So mine, I'll keep it short as well. I know we had a question about the Pomodoro method, and so since I've already addressed basically everything else on my list, I'll go ahead and go over that real quick. So how do you utilize the Pomodoro method? If I believe the question was if you like to take shorter breaks. Um, but just in general, to use the Pomodoro method, so the way I use it is just a general method: 25 minutes on, studying, 5 minutes off, 4 rounds, and then once you're done with that, you get a 30-minute break, and then you start over again. And so that's a really good method if you get distracted. Oh, it was how do you use the Pomodoro if you get distracted easily? That's right. So if you get distracted easily, I would say maybe shorten the time that you're studying to maybe like 15 minutes, and then take like a 3 5 minute break, and then do another 15-minute round, and do that 4 times. If you get distracted real easily and you get off topic, that's probably gonna be your best bet at just utilizing the method to the best of your ability. So great method. If it works for you, it works for you. It really helps me stay on track. I'm sure it'll help a lot of you else stay on track as well. Um, yeah, make sure to ask questions as well.
Okay, I'll go really quickly too. I'm mostly a visual and auditory learner, so if you're one of those, it's going to be most helpful for you. I color coded notes, you can read that. Also, asking your most intimidating friend or crush to quiz you will really get your motivation up, I promise. Also, when we go into classroom mode after Corona, a tip is to sit in the T if you ever have problem staying focused during classes, and the T is going to be the first row and the middle column because that's where the professor will always look. Also, listening to ambiances, there is a website called Ambiances where you can make sounds that fit books or movies. My favorites are listed, and after the PowerPoint is sent out, you can click on them. And also, study blurs really helped up my motivation and got me a lot of tips through infographics. And those are tumblers that are focused on studying. So I just linked my favorite one, and then a master post that lists by country, year in high school or college, and focus in their major. And last tip is just find your why. Why are you bothering to spend hours studying for this exam? I know personally it was because I just wanted to stop doing customer service. And I knew as soon as I got my diploma, I would never have to do a customer service job again, hopefully. Yes. So I answered a Q&A, but there was someone who asked, how do you ask for help? Like, do you raise your hand during lecture or do you ask questions? And I said asking privately after class or during office hours is best because you can ask follow-up questions. And Manny said raising your hand almost always works, and the professor/instructor will be more than likely to be happy to answer it for you. If you don't want to do that, then make sure to write your questions down so you don't forget. And if there are no other questions, I'm just going to announce the winner of the gift card. So congratulations to Diana Cortez. We will be sending you an email with the Target gift card, so look for that. And now this portion of the presentation will be mostly geared toward high school seniors. We're just going to give you a space to learn about the Success Program and then fill out the form about joining the Success Program after you graduate from high school. So we're just gonna, do you want to still do the video? Okay, we're not doing the video. But basically there is a bit.ly link, just copy it or just type it into your web browser. It's bit.ly/COFO Success Program. And it also includes signing up for the mentor program. And what that is you will get a mentor that goes to your college. They'll be a COFO student, but they'll just be older than you, so they know the campus a bit more. So it's like a coach, but more informal. And also, if you're planning to take a gap year, you can still be part of Success. You don't have to be attending a school to have a Success coach. Also, follow us in College Forward, and once you sign up, you'll get a coach or coordinator contacting you in late August or early September. So if you have questions, just reach out to your coach, and the email is programs@collegeforward.org. If you have an after-school meeting, you've probably already had a CSPO meeting or it's coming up, but we'll give you space to fill it out now. If you have any questions, you can ask. And the bit.ly is in the chat.
And thank you for sticking around these last 5 minutes. I know we've kind of gone over a little bit of time. I want to be respectful of that. So thank you all for coming, and it was great being able to share information with y'all. Hopefully y'all don't make the same mistakes that I did.
No, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. It just means so much, and hopefully all these tips will help you.
I'm so glad this was helpful. I'm so glad this was helpful for some people. So thank you.